Welcome back to PhonePhotographyPro.com. Today I'm going to do an initial review of the iPinhole app. Okay, so I'm here in the Columbia River Gorge and I currently had the exposure set to 2 minutes. So the app's pretty simple. You can set the exposure to a certain time, or you can be in mode manual, which I'm in right now, and just decide on the time based on the scenario. So I just took a picture for about 4 seconds. Now I'm going to set the timer to 2 minutes and do a 2-minute exposure and see kind of what that looks like. The clouds are moving pretty quickly today, so I'm hoping that it will be able to blur the clouds a little bit. We'll see how that works out. Traditionally, in pinhole cameras, if something is moving and you have a long enough exposure, then it will blur the image. And here it kind of created a little bit of fuzz. And they store all the pictures in this app in the album, which is interesting. So they're always in the album until you save and move them over into your actual folder on your phone, which I thought was kind of interesting. So now I'm going to go for an even longer exposure. Now, like I said, long exposures lead to blurred images if the subject is moving in a traditional pinhole camera. However, in some cases, like if I was to do a 5-minute exposure in a traditional pinhole camera, it would actually make everything disappear as long as it wasn't there for a significant amount of time. If like someone walked through the frame in a 5-minute exposure, it would actually disappear. So something I've noticed with this app that I've used a couple times is even the slightest bit of motion, regardless of how long the exposure is, will create a blurred effect or blurred image. You could kind of see that with my cat. So in that way, it's not accurate in any way for a traditional pinhole camera, but I do think that it's kind of interesting to see that motion effect. I think that's pretty cool. So something else to note is that I'm using a tripod with this camera app. I don't think that it's really possible to take too many great pinhole images without a tripod, because you really need that stability since you are capturing time. So that's just has to happen. And then with this one as well, with this app, it only shoots in square, and there's plenty of pinhole cameras that don't shoot in square. So that's something that maybe you might think as a little bit of a limitation. And then in addition to it shooting in square, you can also flip the camera around. It'll turn it upside down, but I did this cool like 3 faces, and I had my cat jumping and it blurred him, so that's kind of fun. Up close, it seems to be fuzzier. It likes to take pictures further away, like my Christmas tree is pretty fuzzy, so focal length is not fantastic. Whereas if I turn the camera here to my yard, things start looking a little more crisp. And then even the slightest movement, like just the tiniest bit, will completely blur the image. So you really have to have that stability in your subject too. Here I am in the album for the edits that are offered in the app. They have a develop, so you can play with hue, saturation, and brightness, which is nice to have there. I actually got an image of my cat standing still, so that's a miracle. So I'm playing a little bit with that. You've got softness, vignetting. I think the vignetting could be really fun. That's pretty traditional in darkroom and in pinhole. The noise is fake and icky. I don't love that. Color, you can turn it to black and white, so that's kind of nice, although I still prefer my own editing apps. So overall pros and cons. Pros, it captures time and motion. Reminds me of Edward Muybridge. Same exposure concepts as a pinhole, and you have to shoot on a tripod, which is good, and I love the vignetting feature. Cons are subjects in the frame stay in the frame regardless of time. Editing capabilities are limited and unrefined. Square-only images and focal length is fairly limited as well. Thank you, and for more on traditional pinhole photography, click on the link in the description below.